We both are glad and honored to be part of this particular session. And I hope that this session becomes a very helpful session for the participants. So, this Companies Amendment Act 2020, this has been the fourth or the fifth activity of the government to amend the Companies Act 2013. And this is probably every year we can say that there is one amendment act. The first amendment act was in 2015. Second amendment act was in 2017. Then in 2019 and 2020. So they are not every year practically. The amendments have been notified in each year. So once we have got an amendment act, the particular section of the amendment act gets notified. So this company law has become quite vibrant in the recent times. This was probably one of the laws where we used to comply, file the forms, and the compliance was over. But now there have been quite a few provisions. I can say draconian provisions at the start of the session, but after completing the session, I can say that draconian provisions are no more, not much draconian, considering that they have been decriminalized. So every amendment act, every amendment bill had one theme. The first amendment act, which was of 2015, had a theme of ease of doing business. So there were 12 amendments which were introduced, and they were intended to ease the business in India. Second Amendment Act 2017. This was based on the Company Law Committee report of 2016, and it had around 87 to 89 changes in the Companies Act, and they were not just ease of doing business. They had proper amendments. It changed the interpretation. It deleted few sections. So the focus was more on the interpretation aspect of the Companies Act. Then we had the Companies Act 2019, Companies Amendment Act 2019, and that introduced certain changes. Again, the focus was on decriminalizing the Companies Act. But after passing the act, and after the ordinance, and after quite a few provisions that were notified, the government got to know that there are few provisions that are still yet to be decriminalized. So they introduced the next bill, which is the present thing that we will be discussing. So prior, obviously, to any bill that is introduced, the government usually forms a committee. So in this case also, they had formed a committee, company law committee, and they had introduced the and based on which the company's amendment bill was introduced. However, uh, based on the agenda that was there before the committee, and based on what the suggestions were made by the committee, I can say that around 50 to 60% of the agenda of what has been proposed by the committee has got converted in a bill. And say, just for the if I go by numbers, so suppose 10 things that were prescribed by the government for the committee, then the committee presented a report on, say, 7 or 8, and out of 7 or 8, of 4 or 5 have been implemented in the company's amendment bill. So that is how the way in which the bill is there. But anyways, now it has become an act, and we have to now deal with it, and we have to ensure that the necessary compliances are made. Now, if we see broadly the amendments, this is my understanding. Broadly, the amendments are in three parts. First part is about some ease of doing business, or maybe not ease of doing business. Now they've used a different word. Say that for ease of living corporates, they have introduced a set of provisions, right? So that will be discussed by Nageshji, right? Second is about the producer company, and third is about the decriminalization. Now, if we see the producer company provisions, these producer company provisions are as good as an act in itself. So it starts right from how many directors, how many shareholders, or what are the powers and functions, what in case of dispute, and everything. So everything of producer company is there now. There was a provision under the 1956 Act, but there was no provision in Companies Act 2013. So considering all these nitty-gritties, that what will happen to the producer companies formed under the previous law, the government thought it fit to now finally introduce the law relating to producer company. Same provisions are there. So first is the provisions relating to the compliances and corporate law. Second is with respect to producer company, and third is with respect to decriminalization. So what we have decided is that we will be discussing on the first and the third, and producer company being a topic in itself may not be possible to take it entirely, and it would be applicable to certain class of companies or consultants. So to make it more relevant and practical for the participants, we thought it fit that we will discuss only these two aspects of the company's amendment bill. So, and decriminalization also, I'll try my best that I cover some important points, some points which we should be aware of as professionals or compliance officers or lawyers or law students, that how the basically the compliance mechanism is changing, and what if there is a non-compliance. So that is what we will be discussing. So we had the company's amendment bill that was introduced in the Lok Sabha. As far as I remember, it was somewhere around 4th or 10th of March 2020, just before the lockdown, that the bill was introduced. But it was just introduced, not passed. And now in the recent monsoon session, the bill was introduced and then passed. And just after 2-3 days, in Rajya Sabha, the amendment bill was passed. This was one of the 7 or 8 amendment bills where there was no discussion, and we had quite a few headlines in the newspapers that 7 bill passed in 45 minutes. So company amendment bill was one of that. Okay, then presidential assent also has been the president has also assented to the bill, so it is an act. Now the basic question for all the participants would be, when is it applicable? So if we refer to the act, there is a provision which says that different dates may be appointed for different provisions of this act, and any reference of such provision to the commencement of this act shall be construed with respect to the notification. So now basically government will start issuing notification and notifying sections. The provisions will be notified from that. Now the question would be that when is government notifying? Now if we see these provisions which Nagesh and I will discuss, so most of the provisions require some amendment in the rules. So government will notify these provisions whenever the draft rules are ready, or whenever internally things are ready with the government. So that is one. And one more point is with respect to the with respect to the whether these provisions will be retrospectively applicable. So as of now, there is no proposal, or there is no provision which has got a retrospective effect. The basic question would be mostly about the CSR expenditure. That if you have spent in the last 5 years and they are in excess, can you carry forward it henceforth? So answer based on the wording of the section is no. But anyways, we will be discussing that. But I don't see any provision which is retrospectively applicable or effective. So basically, this is just a quick introduction. I hope that you will enjoy the session, as we will ensure that you also enjoy the discussion that we have. Though we are all sitting at home, and we are all, no, we are not able to see. So what me and Nagesh have discussed, that we will be going a bit to the basics, coming to the amendment, telling the impact of the amendment. Broadly, this is the way that we will be discussing the provisions. So I hope you are means you will adequately gain from the today's session. And just the views are personal; they don't belong to the organization. Probably they may belong to my organization because I'm into practice, and but probably not for Nagesh. Anyway, so let's start with the session based on the introduction. You can take forward, Nagesh, the presentation.
Thank you, Gaurav. First of all, I would like to thank for inviting me to express my views on the topic Companies Amendment Act 2020. As rightly said by Mr. Gaurav, so we since from the beginning to as on date, every year we are just witnessing the amendment, bunch of amendment. The government is naming them as a ease of doing business, because practically speaking, the corporate and practitioners not finding any ease, because most of the amendment, if you observe, not coming out with a proper like say understanding and all. Once we are getting some amendment, and just after few months, without notifying the earlier amendment, we are getting the another amendment with respect to it. We can just take instances of the CSR provisions, like say in 2019, the amendment is not yet got a light of the day. Also the draft rules still are not got a light of the day, and again we are just got a amendment pertaining to CSR. Same was happened with the most of the provision like 185 and all the stringent provisions were brought for the or these related party transactions and all earlier, but later on it is felt there is a dichotomy has been happening with the other provisions. Then after some entire sections got amended and all. So basically speaking, there is now the we are again got this bunch of amendment for this decriminalizing the most of the provision and providing the adjudication facility in-house mechanism so as to most of the punishment and like say violations can be dealt through in-house mechanism. Earlier in the if you to take in a short while, so in 1956 as we can just observe there was a fine and penalties, both the wordings were used. But now right now the most of the since the fine is been dealt through the court of law, so even for the small violations corporates were finding difficulty for litigating the to rectify the same defect for 2 years or 3 years. To provide the solution on this problem, in a one phase already the government have decriminalized the most of the sections and brought the in-house mechanism and dealt the same through in-house mechanism. And against under 2020 Amendment Act, the government had again just some of the sections which can be dealt easily, which can be determinable easily, brought under this in-house mechanism. So in a nutshell, if we take about this decriminalization, the intention is to lighten the penalties so that the act of one should not be an felt and punishment for rest of the all. So taking the note of the same, let's move further. The first of all, the definition of the listed company. Friends, as per the present definition of the listed company, it means a company which has any of its security listed on any recognized stock exchange. What the government has done that proviso has been added under that, whereby the central government is empowered to exempt certain class of companies and certain classes of securities which shall not be considered as a listed company. So obviously that would be decided after in consultation with the SEBI. So SEBI and MCA would decide which securities and which classes of companies can be exempted under the definition of listed company. I think it's a welcome change. So in the coming days, I hope the LODR and the other securities law would also got will get amended considering this exemption, because under the because that would be decided in consultation with the SEBI. So obviously, SEBI would going to exempt these certain securities and class of companies under securities laws as well. I think it's a welcome change, like private limited companies which are listed their debt securities. If you see the present securities law, the securities law are so stringent. So it is higher. Every day we are getting some new amendment and new notification for, and which is very hectic for the debt listed company. There is no even any logic also, because there is no any public money much involved there in the. So it is a unnecessary hardship for companies like private limited who have just listed their debt securities, and just because of they are falling within the definition of this listed, they have to follow some certain exemptions have been given to them. They don't need to follow all the listed LODR provisions and all the disclosure norms. But even though there was a hardship happening with them, so the just to rectify the same, the government have provided this change. Since the change will be done in consultation with the SEBI, which means the SEBI will also exempt certain classes of companies and securities. And accordingly, as I said, this all the ICDRs, LODR, and other regulation is soon going to change. Another one, second one is rectification of the name of the company. Friend, under section 16 there are central government has a power to issue direction where the central government find the existing name of any company is identical or too resemble with the existing name of the any other company. Also, there is another instance where any trademark owner files an application to central government, where the trademark owner finds that any existing name of the company is too resemble with his registered trademark. So under this condition, the central government direct the company to change the name, and and the concerned company have to change their name within a 3 month. Earlier, this limit was within 6 months they have to change their name, but now it is made to 3 months. So they have to change their name after getting direction from the central government. If they won't change any their name, then penal consequence was used to be followed in earlier regime. So in a company law committee, what they have felt that there was when CLC were segregating the offences, like say they are just bifurcating which violation can be brought under a bucket of fine and which violation can be brought under the bucket of in-house adjudication. So they have felt that there are certain violations. There were no much cases, and there it is not appropriate to brought them in the bucket of fine, or not only appropriate to brought them into the bucket of like say in-house adjudication. So as to deal such a provision, they have brought one unique amendment in that. So as per this amendment, section 16 1A 1B, if the central government finds that any existing name of the company is too identical or resemble, or any trademark owner files an application to the central government, then and if the central government direct the company to change the name, and if the concerned company didn't observe the direction of the CG and didn't change its name within 3 months, so in that case the auto generated name would be allocated to that name, to that company. Also, the central government direct the ROC to issue a new incorporation certificate under new name to that company. And obviously, like say auto generated ABC XYZ, any name would get allocated to that company, and ROC would issue a new incorporation certificate to that company. Obviously, that company can change the name later, but they have to follow the whole procedure of the name change, and accordingly they have to get the name change. Another one is the listing of public company in foreign jurisdiction. Friend, listing of foreign securities outside India. In view of the evaluation and globalization of capital market across the globe, SEBI had constituted an expert committee on 12 June 2018. The committee had given its findings that in view of the globalization and liberalization, it is need to we should not be restrict to only the domestic market, and we should allow the Indian companies to go to list their securities outside, directly list their securities in foreign jurisdiction, certain foreign jurisdiction, and simultaneously the foreign companies shall also be allowed to directly list their securities in India. As per the present regime, the Indian companies cannot list their securities directly into foreign stock exchange. They are just allowed to list their depository receipt to foreign stock exchange through ADR or GDR. Simultaneously, the foreign companies are allowed to list their depository receipt in Indian stock exchange through Indian depository receipt, which we call as IDR. So similarly, uh, similarly, this if we see this IDR and ADR, that are not that much lucrative, and they don't have that much like say base so as to tap the entire capital market. So then so they are not that much popular. So government felt it is need to allow to the direct listing of the securities in foreign jurisdiction. Accordingly, this consultation paper and the discussion was happened, and which was going on from very long time. So what they have done then, under this amendment, certain class of public companies are allowed to list their prescribed securities on stock exchange on permissible jurisdiction or such other jurisdiction as may be specified by the rules. So obviously, that would be under the rules would be specify which securities and which companies can list their securities in a foreign jurisdiction. Uh, It further empowers the government to exempt by notification these specified companies from the applicability of Section 3, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, Section 89, Section 19, Section 127. Obviously, means these provisions are dealt with the securities and dividend and all. So, if the concerned securities has been listed, are going to be listed in other jurisdiction, there is no any logic to make them comply, so ask them to comply this provision, so as to, that's why this exemption also is being given under this amendment. I think this is a welcome change, which will give the option to companies to choose jurisdiction as per their requirement. Friends, whenever any company wanted to tap to any foreign jurisdiction, or wanted to list their securities in any foreign stock exchange, so inter alia, there are lots of factors include, but some of the factors which are generally considered, how is the ease of business in the country, and how the prevailing law of that country. Considering this fact, if we just compare these two facts, if we take companies like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, these are the countries. If we see their like say economic laws and their securities law, these are not that much complex, and there are not much draconian provisions which are there. Generally, foreigners are. Even if we see for arbitration cases and any other cases, they generally prefer such jurisdictions which will provide the ease for their business. So having said that, if we compare the same with our Indian laws, we can see that there is no any ease. So if you see the as far as the securities laws are concerned, there is no any stability. We can, as we know that every day we are getting some new notification and new circulars from the SEBI, and new compliances keeps on coming. So generally, no any startups. In case of a bigger listed company, it's okay. They have a proper system in place. They have a huge secretarial department. But what about the small listed companies? So they are still struggling to comply with all the this requirement which is keeps on coming. So the view of the CB to compare each and everyone together equal is not a right. There is no any ease of doing this. Just generally, if any startup wanted to come out with the IPO, so obviously all these things would be very important for him. So having said that, if we just consider this all this aspect, the generally the any corporate would prefer such a jurisdiction which will provide ease to them. Apart from that, friends, this amendment of Section 23, there are this amendment will going to have an impact in most of other legislations as well, and which required a proper review. And I think in the coming days, the government required to just review these laws also, and accordingly some amendment required them, like say in a FEMA Act, amendment in FEMA Act, amendment in Income Tax Act, amendment in Companies Act, RBI Act, SEBI Act, or the further amendments will required just because of this amendment of this one section. Because if we say for example of Income Tax Act, how the taxation would be happen in case of transfer of share from resident to non-resident. So would there be any capital gain would be levied on that? As far as the FEMA is concerned, there is an instance how would we ensure the sectoral cap limit, sectoral cap limit, because if you are going to list the securities in foreign jurisdiction, one being a listed company, you cannot have a tap on that. So how the sectoral cap would be ensured? Apart from that, certain company like certain sectors in which the like say FDI is not allowed, like single brand retail trade and all. What would be the situation if any company who is being engaged in the, like say single brand retail trade, and which is falling within the specified limit? Suppose the government has specified certain threshold and something such a which is falling within that threshold, such companies are allowed to list their securities in foreign countries. So are these companies won't there be any sectoral violation, like say because sectoral violation, because violation of FEMA, if there's such a company, if the company who is engaged in this like single brand retail trade and listing their securities in and foreign jurisdictions. Apart from the some SEBI disclosure, there are lots of amendment all these security related disclosures and all, which we have filed under LODR and all, that also need to be amended, because if the securities are going to be listed in foreign jurisdiction, so there is no any requirement to provide the same disclosure to SEBI. So accordingly, so this concern amendment also required to be done under, like say, SAST regulation and other LODR and other securities related law. Apart from the, it required the amendment under PITS also, because if you see the PITS regulation, the PITS regulation mainly concerned with the securities which are listed in India. So there is not any instance, though under section 15G, if there is any violation or fraud detection, so obviously the SEBI may invoke the section 15G, and the ambit of this 15G can be go to other jurisdiction as well. But if you just about the PIT, it is not cover the securities like which is listed in other countries. So accordingly, that I felt there is an amendment required in PITS regulation as well. Apart from that, other points which need to be pondered, like apart from that, like say we feel some amendment in Companies Act also required to be done. RBI Act also required to be done. Some technical formalities, like so filing of FCGPR, FCTRS, would it require being a shares you've been allocated, it been being a company is the resident company, only the securities are listed in foreign jurisdiction. So would there be any requirement of filing FCGPR, FCTRS? These technical for all these technical aspects that are also required to be looked into, and need to have a review also. I think this is a good move. It help boost the Indian companies, its brand, and give an opportunity to show their brands in global market. Also, this will help the startups also, so they won't need to rely on domestic company, and boost their and list their security in foreign jurisdiction. This will also lower the cost of capital of the company, considering the prevailing inflation of other countries, and considering the wider pool of investor base. So considering this one, if the in India the cost of capital is too high as compared to other jurisdiction, so obviously this will help the corporate to lower their cost of capital as well. CSR related provision. Friends, before going to directly on the CSR provision, let's look at the what is the CSR is. And CSR is the social obligation which is comes under. It was not under 1956 Act. It was brought under to Company Act 2013. So government felt that since the company is operating in a social environment, so there is a need they should devote some something for the society from where they get the benefit. So that's why this provision was brought under Company Act 2013. Under section 131, 135(1), there are certain threshold is being prescribed, which is based on turnover, net profit, and net worth of the company. If any company which is falling within the threshold of 135(1), these companies are required to constitute a CSR committee, and the CSR company have to ensure that the company spent minimum 2% of the average net profit of the preceding 3 financial year. So preceding 3 financial net profit is the net profit is not our accounting net profit. It is the net profit as per section 198. As per section 198 net profit, there are certain like say addition and deletion, permissible and non-permissible expenses are mentioned. So after adjusting all these expenses, we get a net profit. So we get that net profit. It is nothing but if you observe this all these permissible or non-permissible expenses, nothing but the net profit is itself. But only certain, if the company have taken certain in a net profit, a certain credit have been given by the company, or certain debit have been taken by the company which is not permissible, that adjustment need to be done under net profit. So based on that net profit calculation, the company have to spend 2% of the net profit of preceding last preceding financial year on CSR within the financial year. And the CSR committee have to ensure that the budget need to be get approved generally in a corporates where when the financials have been approved in the same meeting, or generally in the next meeting they approve the CSR meeting also conducted based on the budget is being allocated, and budget is being approved based on this financials, approved financials, and on basis of that some projects is being decided, and accordingly as per the project some amounts is being delegated for the each of the projects. And the CSR committee, there are certain duties has been prescribed under section 135 and schedule 7. So this CSR committee have to review this whether this whatever the budget is being allocated, whether it is being spent or not, they have to review the same. Also they have to approve the policy and approve the annual report of the CSR. All these are the duties which is being prescribed to the CSR committee. So under Companies Act 2000, main first when this provision of CSR was brought under Companies Act 2013, it was based on the provision of comply or explain, which means there was no any penal provision. Obviously that since it's a disclosure obligation, and so so penalty may be imposed imposed section 134 in case the company not made a proper disclosure. But under 135 there was no any penal provision. It was simply based on the principle of comply or explain. If in case the company haven't complied the CSR provision, they have to explain the same, the reason why they have not just spent within that financial year whatever the CSR obligation is. So under later on the government felt that even every second or third annual report of any listed company, if you observe, and even if you see the statistic, around 55 to 60% companies were on an average complying with the CSR obligation. And like say every fourth or third annual report mentioning that there are due to certain standard lines, we are just observing that due to so and so reason the company are not spend so and so their obligation on CSR during this so and so financial year. So government felt that there is some time to take action against the companies who are not spending even after having a profit, or even they are not spending CSR. Considering this fact, in earlier years, the government have started issuing show cause notice to the corporates why the penalty should not be levied under 450 and all against the companies and all for violation of CSR obligations. Considering this fact, the under Companies Amendment Act 2019, we have saw the shift of this CSR provision from the social obligation to the penal consequences. So under Companies Amendment Act 2019, what amendment they have brought, that there are lots of amendment were brought under CSR provision. Like say CSR activities cannot be done from the trust, through the trust or societies. They can be done through only Section 8 companies, or like say if the company haven't spent their CSR obligation after like say 6 months and all, they have to transfer their whatever the unspent amount to their specific fund, CSR account and all. So these are the some of the changes they have brought. And the penal provision which they have brought is that there was a imprisonment penalties were also brought under section, like which was like that minimum. Earlier it was like say 50 lakhs to 25 lakhs penalty was for the corporates who didn't observe the CSR obligation and not spend the amount. And also the 3 years of imprisonment on the officer in default was brought. So having said that, all these stringent provision, government later on felt that it is it was like an extorting of money from the corporate, because considering the nature of the CSR, it's a social obligation of the company, and you cannot punish the officer in default and the company who are just couldn't spend of CSR or couldn't meet their CSR obligation. Having said that, considering their mistake, so in Companies Amendment Act 2020, they have again brought 3 changes. First of all, they allowed a set off of their unspent amount, set off of any excess spent on CSR. Friends, earlier if we see that there were some representation given by the corporates and practitioners regarding that, what if the company has spent the excess amount on CSR, can we get a, because since this is not a business expenditure, we cannot get a exemption in the exemption. So can we get some rebate or something, or some benefit in the income tax act for the amount which we spent in excess of our required spent under CSR obligation? But later on, the government have rejected this representations and all, and government said that no, we are not going to provide any exemption or anything regarding this. So having said that, in a company's amendment at 2019, some multi-year projects were also allowed. The company can take multi-year projects under CSR, which can be go up to like say more than 1 year. So having said that, if the multi-year projects is been allowed, there may be a situation the company may spend excess amount on CSR on first year, and there may be a situation less spent was happen in the next year. So what about the excess spent I have done in earlier years? So can't I get? Should it be logical to I should have to get a exemption in subsequent years, because it is been allowed in under a CSR obligation to I can just take the multi-year projects and all. Having said that, the government have under Companies Amendment Act 2020, they have given the allow the set off for the succeeding financial years. The wording which is here mentioned that years, which means that it is not pertaining to only next year I can get an exemption for the excess spent I have done earlier year. So it is mentioned a year. So maybe in a draft rules or something, they may provide up to how many years we can just take the set off and all. So they maybe specify in a draft rule something. Also about the second one amendment under CSR, which they brought that the amount of 50 lakhs rupees, there is no any requirement to constitute a CSR committee, which means that if the the company's obligation is to spend up to 50 lakhs, these companies are not required to constitute a mandatory CSR committee. All the duties prescribed under the CSR Act and under Schedule 7. So this obligation can be done, can be, these rights and obligation can be done by the board itself. Earlier, and say for the private limited company, it was already exemption was given only if the company had only two directors. So only these two directors can be comply all the provisions of the CSR committee itself. But for the unlisted public company, yes, it is also welcome move. There is no need for unnecessary compliances for the committee constitution and all. So obviously, hopefully, this would provide some ease in the compliance regime. Again, another third word change which were they brought is that if you see closely observe this Companies Amendment Act 2020, if you see most of the like say penalties have been reduced, and if you see earlier like say in a fine regime, which we have observed the minimum to maximum limit we are given. For example, minimum 5 lakhs rupees, which may go up to 25 lakhs. But here in some of the provisions, if you see observe the penalty amount been reduced, and also some most of the section it has been capped on a fixed amount or something. So having said that, in the amended in this amendment, they have just made the change that they have just increased the penalty, which is prescribed that twice the amount required to be transferred by the company, or rupees 1 crore, whichever is less for the company, and every officer in default liable to pay a 1/10 of the amount required to be transferred, or rupees 2 lakh rupees. If you see, friends, if you read this officer in default, it was mentioned 1/10 each. Every officer in default required to spend 1/10 of the amount. So it means every officer in default would be liable for a 1/10 of the amount. Thanks to this later part of this amendment, which is capped this amount to up to 2 lakhs rupees, because after 2 lakhs there is no any mention of every officer in default or anything. So reading this together, which means this total amount would be capped at 2 lakhs rupees. 2 lakhs rupees means there are six officer in default. So combining all the limits of them, 1/10 of the amount together, it would be capped at 2 lakhs rupees. I think it's a good change. Otherwise, there were, if that saving 2 lakhs rupees was not there, otherwise there would be a huge onerous responsibility on officer in default. They would be liable to pay such a huge amount if the company wouldn't observe the CSR provision.
Okay, thank you, Nageji. So that was some brief discussion on some amendments. So now, considering the present situation, unlisted public companies and private companies are treated at par for filing the financial statements. So after the AGM, within 30 days, they have to file all the returns, and 60 days. Now, what the government is doing is government has introduced a provision in the act through section 129 clause A, whereby they will be mandating certain unlisted public companies to report on a quarterly basis or a half yearly basis with respect to the financial statements. This would be somewhat similar to what listed companies do. So I'll just read out that relevant part. It says that central government may require such class or classes of public companies, unlisted public companies, as may be prescribed to prepare financial results of the company for such periodical on such periodical basis as may be prescribed, and obtain the approval of the board of directors and complete audit or limited review for such periodical financial statements and file a copy within 30 days of the completion. Now, this would be one thought that there is a reference of unlisted companies. There is no reference of unlisted public companies. So probably that could have been an error. But if we see the company law committee report, that they have specifically said it is unlisted public companies. The to give some background why this kind of an amendment is introduced is because in the recent times there have been unlisted public companies and there have been corporate governance lapses, and these unlisted public companies have raised money from public through various other means, though not through shares, and they remained unlisted public companies, and they invested in certain assets which were not performing, and there was a possibility of default. So government got to know all this at a very latter point of time, and the other actions were not taken within a prescribed time. So to consider the stakeholders' perspective, they are now introducing this kind of an amendment. Now, give some more on this particular amendment is that they are also proposing board of directors approval and also a limited review by the auditor. So something like listed entities. So generally, what happens that when there is a private company and there are investors involved, they convert that into a public company, and depending on market conditions, they come out with an IPO, and the investor sells its stakes, and they are out of the company as investors, and it may be sold to a retail investor or any other investor, but that is how the OFS stake is offered for sale. Now, considering this entire amendment, there is a very, at least I feel there is a thin line difference between now a listed entity and an unlisted entity, a listed public company and an unlisted public company, specifically in relation to financial results. Because if government is going to make them so strict, then only thing left is the disclosures, which they do with the listed entities do it to the stock exchanges. So considering this, probably that unlisted public company, a private company, unlisted public company, and a public company, that life of unlisted public company may get reduced. Right, that is possible in certain cases. But again, let's wait for some more clarity in the rules. This is one point. It is good in a way. This is not. This is probably not ease of doing business, but they are including more transparency and disclosures by certain class of companies. Okay. Now we come to the very heart of this Companies Amendment Act, and I was just going through these amendments in the afternoon, and I got to know again means every time I read the Amendment Act, I get to know a few more things. I got to know that there are 66 amendments that have been introduced. Though I have not prepared a statistical analysis, but I am of the view that around 48 to 50 amendments relate to the change in the offenses, whether it is a penalty or a fine. Okay. So before we go to that part, and since in this plea bridge, there is also that we discuss about the prospects of what we discuss, career prospects. So I feel that since most of the amendments have been introduced and the penal provisions have been changed, I feel that the area of representation and adjudication is going to be one of the key areas under the Companies Act. One of the key areas. So, like, to give you some, maybe there could be some students as well. or young lawyers or young company secretaries. Broadly, whenever we say a practice of a corporate law professional, it says about audit, compliance, registrations. Maybe it can include legal opinion and representation. Broadly, these are the ways in which a practice is there. Now, in representation, there is only reference of NCLT, NCLAT, SEBI, SAT, or other tribunals or courts under the company law or corporate law. Now, when it comes to the representation, one more thing will be added is representation before the adjudicating officer. And under section 454, there is a reference of an adjudicating officer to a registrar of company. So now, practically, if you see, even from the perspective of ROC, most of the filings, like not most, 100% of the filings are done in a electronic mode, right? And most of them are through STP mode, straight through processing, and very few require the approval of the ROC, and there are very critical and very few which require the approval of the ROC. So because of this, MCA 21, they have the working of ROC has also changed. Now this adjudication, what is going to happen is, wherever there is a reference of a penal provision and there is a reference of penalty, those will be the provisions under which the ROC has got a power to issue a show cause notice under section 454. After the show cause notice is issued, they will be then issuing the next part, specifically in relation, there will be an opportunity of hearing, there will be a written representation, oral representation, and based on that, the order will be passed. So this is the way in which presently the SEBI as well works, right? Like to give you a very recent example of, there is an order that is there on the SEBI website of Yes Bank, and there were some disclosure lapses, and therefore a penalty of 1 crore has been levied on the company and the director. So what I'm trying to say is that this is how the adjudication process is maybe all settled under the SEBI. Now, similar process will start under the Companies Act. So whenever you are consulting a client or a company or your own board of directors, we need to see that, suppose the director say, we don't want to disclose this in the director's report. We don't want to, make, disclosures about CSR. We don't want to pay. We don't want to do the CSR, or we want to do, but not 2%. It is very heavy. It is not, you can say, a business decision or a business friendly decision. So we would like to pay or spend something less. So what I'm trying to say, that whenever such kind of non-compliances are going to take place, we need to see as whether that non-compliance can be rectified by compounding, or whether that non-compliance can be, triggered by the ROC issuing a notice, right? And what this Amendment Act has done, that around 40-45 sections, the fine has been replaced by penalty. So since there is a penalty, there will be a show cause notice that will be issued under 454, and there are now rules made under the rules under the adjudication provision. So we have got companies adjudication rules. So they have defined how that will take place. And any person aggrieved by the order of ROC can appeal to the registrar, to the regional director. So that is how they have introduced this particular provision. So I will just pick a few provisions because there are many. And what I've done is, I have highlighted a few provisions. Just I thought that there would be very few, but as I was reading, I got to know that I have to buy a Bear Act, or probably everybody in around needs to buy a Bear Act after this. So I'll just be pushing or referring to some important provisions only. And this is basically all about decriminalization, which is probably the theme of the Companies Amendment Act 2020 and theme of today's session. So I'll just refer to one provision. There is one provision relating to Section 8. And Section 8, there is a penal provision which says that if you don't comply with the provisions, there will be a penalty on the, there will be fine on the directors and the company, and there will be an imprisonment for 1 year because you don't comply with Section 8. Now they have removed that imprisonment from Section 8, right? Then we have got one provision about prospectus. Now, if there is a misstatement in prospectus or any non-disclosures or company contravenes the provisions of Section 26, then that imprisonment is gone. So what is there is only fine, right, on the company and the directors of the company. Then there is also one provision, say with respect to transfer and transmission. So at certain places, there is a reference of penalty, there is a reference of fine. And government has reduced that, keeping intact what is penalty and what is fine. So that they have ensured that particular compliance. Now I'll refer to one provision specifically in relation to the alteration in the share capital, section 64. Even in that, there is an amendment with respect to the, there is a reference which says that if there is a non-compliance, then the company and the every officer shall be liable for a penalty. And if there is more than that, if there is a continuing compliance, non-compliance, then they have prescribed a higher threshold. So they have reduced these, you can say, the penal provisions. One important part about one of the aspect is, yeah, about register of members. If the company doesn't comply with respect to maintaining a register of members, which is the permanent record of the company, then ROC can issue a show cause notice under section 454, because that non-compliance has changed from fine to penalty, right? And therefore, when we are preparing the annual return of the company, or when we are certifying as professionals, we have to ensure that the company has got all these records intact. Because if we say that the company has not maintained the register of members, then obviously the government would, as professionals, we would be the first persons who will report that the company has complied or not. So therefore, that would be one more aspect to it, right? One important aspect which is important for subsidiary, wholly owned subsidiaries, joint venture companies, is with respect to beneficial holding. There is a provision, section 89, which says about beneficial interest, registered owner, beneficial owner, right? If you don't comply, there are three penal provisions. Now they have said if you don't comply, there is a penalty that will be levied. So in case of non-compliance, the offense moves to the ROC, and the ROC can issue the show cause notice and get it rectified. Interestingly, even about the annual return, the penalty amount has been reduced. I will be referring to, yeah, proxy related also. There is an amendment. I will be bringing some more important points. Yeah, there is one provision under section 124 which relates to unpaid dividend account, right? So when the dividend is paid, it is to be paid within 5 days. If paid but not credited, you move it to the unpaid dividend account. So if there is a non-compliance in that particular part, then there is a provision which says that you have to. Then there is a provision for fine, which is now moved on to the penalty. Yeah, I will just refer to one part. Yeah, director's report. This is very critical for the corporate law professionals. Presently, there is a reference of fine. If you contravene the provisions of section 134 about director's report, or there is inadequate disclosures, then there is a reference about fine on the directors and the company. Then in that case, the now this has been replaced by penalty by the adjudicating officer. So the next step, we have to ensure that part of the compliance. So director's report, at least I feel that reporting responsibility has significantly been increased, right? So like that, there are quite a few provisions, and at some places, I'll give you one more reference. Under section 184, there is one point which says that if a director doesn't disclose, then he will be imprisoned and he will also be penalized, right? That is under 144 184. If he doesn't disclose under 184, disclosure of interest, then he also vacates under 167. So he vacates, he is penalized, and he is imprisoned. So all possible, he's all possible ways in which he is penalized. Now the government says that you will be only vacated, you will be penalized, but you will not be imprisoned for the non-disclosure. So like that, wherever there are, probably there is a remedy in the law itself, but that is not that is not probably taken care of when the company law was drafted. So they have now removing those provisions and not making a dual way in which the person will be penalized. So that is one point about the yeah. One more important aspect I would like to focus is on the provisions of section 188. This is very critical, and I was also very astonished to know that in case of RPT non-compliance, okay, if a company doesn't comply with the provisions of RPT, section 188, then presently the provision says, there is a provision which says in case of listed entity, this is the non-compliance provision. In case of unlisted companies, this is the non-compliance. In case of listed entity, he is punishable with a term of 1 year and with a fine not less than 25,000, and which may extend to 5 lakh. And in case of other company, that is unlisted company, it will be punishable with fine 25,000 and up to 5 lakhs. So there is no imprisonment for that. Now this has been all replaced, and now they are saying that there will be a penalty. in case of RPT non-compliance. So what was the rationale of this in the CLC report is that they said that in case there is a non-compliance, and if there is a non-compliance of 188, you can get it. Basically, the contract is void as per 188. Then you have got directors, you have got shareholders. You can get it. You can. They are also the people who can enforce those, or enforce as in they can go against the company, and they say that they can. This is not a in compliance with the provision. So what they have observed, that there are ways and means through which you can get a remedy. So why there should be a requirement of fine and imprisonment? So they have removed fine and imprisonment. Now, interestingly, if there is a non-compliance of RPT, ROC will issue a no show cause notice, and then you have to prove everything, that you took the board approval, audit committee approval, you entered in the register, you whatever, how they are related and all. So what's going to happen means, probably this is the last amendment about decriminalization that I'll be discussing. But what I'm trying to say is that things are going to drastically change, at least I feel, on the compliance management of company. Because when you see, if there is a non-compliance and there is a provision for fine, I can at any time of any point of time go to the NCLT and get the offense compounded. So it is at my discretion. Unless and until the government issues a show cause notice that this is a non-compliance, get it compounded. Okay. Now, if there is a non-compliance now, and I know that after say 6 months I got to know that there is a non-compliance, then the only thing left is the government issuing a show cause notice. So I have to wait for the show cause notice. So that becomes now very critical. And if it is just, it is a hanging sword that you have to wait for the show cause. You don't know when the show cause notice will come, when it will be noticed, right? So now the government will also set up some practices of, issuing show cause notice to the company. Companies Act will evolve. At least I feel after the adjudication proceeding starts, because if you see the SEBI law has also evolved after the adjudication proceedings have started. So we have got the SEBI orders, SAT orders. Some SEBI orders have been challenged in the High Court. Some SEBI circulars have been challenged in the High Court. In the same way, probably it may take place under the Companies Act, right? So I feel that, and I have read quite a few adjudicating orders of issued by the ROC, and there have been personal hearings. It is available not just for me. Anybody can read. It is available on the MCA website, and you can read how what all these orders are all about, right? So this is basically what is decriminalization. So broadly to say, if it is a very harsh provision, make it lighter. If you have already got two penal provisions, keep one. And if you have got a penal provision which is not required, then the provisions have been deleted. Basically, this is the way in which it has been decriminalized under the Companies Act. And to give you one more reference, the Companies Act Amendment Act 2019 to some extent was also on the same lines. Now we have got section 66, total 66 sections. Even in the previous act, we had some similar number of sections, and the act was decriminalized. Earlier, 1956 act was already decriminalized. Then it was criminalized, and again now it is decriminalized. So probably that is the way in which it is there. But now, yeah, we can go to the next slide, and maybe Nagesh ji can take to the next few points in the Companies Amendment Act.
Thank you, Gauravji. Yes, as Gauravji has explained, so how while just bifurcating this all the penal provision, the rationales were given under CLC report. Most of the if the penal provisions have already been covered under another penal provision, so there is no need to put the penal provision for the same offense under two different sections. So seen simultaneously, as Gauravji has said, under 184 they have just already there was a reference under 167. Similarly, like saying 143 and 147 was similarly some anomaly was there. So these are some anomaly are being removed under this Companies Amendment Act. Simultaneously, as like insider trading regulation, it is already been covered under like say under a SEBI Act, which is so wider. So these unnecessary provisions were already been removed, which can be dealt through other legislations. So let's move further, friends. Change in the timeline of the right issue. So as to give the ease of business. So first of all, friends, before going to the like say right issue, let's under section 23, there are certain ways through which the public limited company and private limited companies can raise the fund. As far as the public limited companies is concerned, it can issue securities through public offer, private placement, or right issue. Whereas in case of private limited company, they can issue securities through right issue and private placement only. They are not eligible to do like say public issue. So now coming on to the right issue. The right issue means the under the right issue, the company can issue their securities to their existing shareholder on proportion to their existing holding. So under the current regime of the right issue, the issue shall require to be kept open under the right issue procedure for a minimum period of 15 days to 30 days, so as to get the fund within that window period from the existing shareholders who are wanted to subscribe for the right issue of the company. So this already was exempted under 5th June notification to the private limited companies, because there was no any logic, because in a closely private limited companies, though it is maximum 200 members are allowed under company 2013 act, the private limited companies can have. So but there is no any rationale to ask them to keep for a prolonged time. So if the company get like say 90% members consent, so that can be kept open for less than 15 days. So in a similar note, the same benefit to extended the same benefit to the closely held companies. Government felt that it is empowered to exempt certain class companies to keep the open for less than 15 days. So in the same note, I think it's a good move, which will help the closely held public limited to get the fund at a faster pace. Similar note, friends, if you see the listed regulations, securities laws, the SEBI already under ICDR simplified the right issue process. So earlier there are so many disclosures were required, and the procedure which was required under right issue was too long. So as to enable the corporate to raise the fund at a shorter within a shorter span, so SEBI already simplified the right issue procedure. Again, SEBI have just simplified the preferential allotment procedure also, preferential issue procedure also for listed company. So in a similar note, here it is proposed to reduce this timeline for the corporate, so that it can just raise the fund in a shorter period. Second one, remuneration to non-executive directors of the company in case of loss or inadequate profit. Friend, before going on to the amendment, what the change they have brought. So let me take you through the provisions related with the managerial remuneration. So generally, when we are talking about this managerial remuneration limits, it is we are just presently talking about only unlisted company, listed company. Although we are not dealing with this LODR provision, but provisions under the Companies Act, which we are discussing right now, because these limits and are not applicable to the private limited company. Under section 197, subsection 1, the total managerial remuneration is capped at 11%, friends. Under the second proviso there of 197 subsection 1, so again they have just segregated the limit in case of executive management and in case of non-executive management. So in case of the companies having managing director, full-time director, manager, only he can be entitled up to 5% of the net profit. If in case of more than one managing director, full-time director, manager, to together, in combined together, there will be a 10% of the net profit limit capped for them. In case of other directors, which is non-executive, which is talking about non-executive directors. So in case there is no any MD, full-time director, manager on the board, so other non-executive directors are entitled to 3%, whereas MD, full-time director, manager, wherever there is on the board, if there is a managing director, full-time director, manager on the board, the non-executive director can get 1%. Rationale behind there won't be a higher responsibility than them. because they already have a like say board, and this total limit like 11% can be met. Like for example, if there is more than one MDU whole time director, we already capped it at 10%. So balance would be, so you can just wait, total can be capped within 11% limit. So while we are talking about this limit, it talking about when the company has an only profit. uh, what about when the company has a loss? So can this other directors or managing director can get the remuneration? Here it comes section 197 subsection 3, which give the reference to the schedule 5, which talks that notwithstanding whatever contained in section 197 subsection 1 and 2, subject to the compliance of the schedule 5, in case the company has a loss or inadequate profit, that company shall not pay the remuneration, shall pay the remuneration subject to the condition prescribed under schedule 5. So under schedule 5, when we go to the schedule 5, which is applicable to only executive directors, it is not applicable to non-executive directors. Here friend, we are not talking about independent directors, we are just non-executive directors. So in schedule 5, it is no, it is only dealt with this executive directors only, non-executive directors not cover, which means, and under schedule 5, certain in case of loss in a part 2, they have just certain threshold they have mentioned on the basis of the effective capital of the company, and against that effective capital, the maximum amount which can be provided to the director, they have just mentioned. So based on that, the company can pay only that much remuneration to the executive directors only. So what if the company have, because generally in a companies we get the financial at the year end, and that after we realize that we have spent excess remuneration to managing director or whole time director. So in that case, there is also like say earlier it was mentioned, the central government permission required if company want to pay excess remuneration over the schedule 5 limit, or company may wanted to go for the waiver of the managerial remuneration. So earlier there was a central government procedure, central government approval were prescribed. So in Companies Amendment Act 2019, so they are brought under certain changes under 197 and schedule 5. The so as to brief about this changes which was happened in the Companies Amendment Act, and which was done effective from this November 2018. I think this section or this manager remunerated provision was effective. uh, so what they have, the changes I have done from this 2018 to 19 under manager remuneration is that under first proviso of 197, they have added the ordinary resolution, and second proviso they have added the special resolution, which means that if the company wanted to pay over and above of this total 11% of the limit, then the company can pass a ordinary resolution under 197 subsection 1, or pass the special if the company is not meeting with the 5%, 10% for the executive directors, and this 3%, 1% limit. So that company can pass the special resolution under 197 1 second proviso, or else for the this can be passed for the each director, or it can be passed for the combining all together. This resolution can be passed all together, or company simply pass 197 by giving reference to second proviso, read with the schedule 5. So a company can pay any amount of remuneration to executive directors and non-executive directors as per section 197, the amendment which was brought. But if you read the same with the schedule 5, so schedule 5, they have earlier in the part 2 section 2, they have mentioned earlier it was mentioned the twice the amount which is mentioned under part 2. So after the amendment, they have made the change that in excess of the limit prescribed under part 2, which means that in case of the you can pay an excess remuneration to the executive directors, or even non-executive directors as well as under 197. But in case of inadequate profit, the non-executive directors who are not falling under schedule 5, so you can just pay the remuneration to only executive directors. because this same in excess of the wording is being added in the schedule 5. So company can, by passing a special resolution, can pay the any remuneration to executive directors. Now coming to this rationale behind this amendment, so government have felt that it is if in case there is a loss the company can pay any amount to the executive directors, and why then company can't pay to non-executive directors, and why the remuneration cannot be paid to independent directors in case of loss? Because if we see in recent quarters, there were in recent scams and all, the ROC were and SEBI were launching a prosecution and show and issuing show cause notice to even the independent directors and non-executive directors. So if in case of any wrong, you are treating the non-executive directors, independent directors at par with the executive management. So in case of the loss, why can't they get a benefit out of that? So coming, if we have already observed in recent past that non-executive directors and independent directors are fleeing from the board, considering the ongoing litigations going on with the company, because they are not that much incentivized so as to get that burden and the responsibility which they are carrying. So having regard to this, the government felt that it is important to incentivize the independent directors and non-executive directors for the responsibility which they are carrying on the board. And so as to incentivize them, it is important to remunerate them sufficiently so they can just discharge their responsibility, and whatever the responsibility cast on them by the regulators. Having regard to this, the consent change were done under section like say 197 subsection 3 and 149.3, whereby the company can pay, in case of the loss, company can pay the remuneration to non-executive directors also and independent directors also, so in accordance with the schedule 5. Friends, here we can just also observe that it is there is no any reference, though it is amendment was mentioned under the 149.9 and 197.3. Obviously there may be some details pertaining to this may be prescribed under rules and all, regarding other sections and all, but so as to give the effect to this both the provision, there will be required to have a further amendment and under schedule 5 also, because there is no any reference for non-executive directors and independent directors under schedule 5. It is applicable to only executive directors. So as to give the effect of this amendment, so I think the government need to so in the coming days would amend this schedule 5 as well, so that the this amendment can be given effect to. Let's move further. Reporting of certain resolution, NBFC and all. Friend, as per section 117, the company are required to file certain resolution and agreements with the ROC. So earlier the some exemption has been already given to banking companies regarding this filing of resolution regarding grant of loan or giving of guarantee or providing of security in respect of the loan which they are providing in the ordinary course of business. So later on, under company law report, it was discussed that there are most of the NBFC companies, they are also engaged in the similar. They are also in their ordinary course of business. They are also providing, granting loan, providing guarantee and securities to the corporates. So why the same benefit should not be extended to them? So having regard to this, this amendment was brought for the NBFCs also, whereby register NBFCs and register housing finance company, the same benefit which is being given to banking companies, so they can also enjoy the same benefit. So these exemption were brought under for the NBFCs and all.
Since there would be few students for understanding a few logic of the amendment or rationale of the amendment, in my view, we need to read the company law report and then the amendment act. Directly referring to the amendment act would not be adequate, because we'll be just understanding this amendment is there. That is one. Second is, it is also necessary that another round of companies amendment would be required, because the agenda that was there before this committee is not complete, is my personal view. Because I will give you one or two examples. There is one provision which says that the government should introduce a consent mechanism whereby the provisions can be one of the if there are non-compliances, they can be that part will be complete from the company's perspective. There is one more part which says that they want to align the provisions of Companies Act with LLP. That is another point. Means wherever, like if we see the present provisions under the Companies Act, there are two provisions which says that a firm includes LLP. And the first one is the auditor's appointment, and second one is the SBO, right? There is no other provision where firm is a LLP. Like for example, RPT, firm and LLP are considered separately. In case of Section 185, that is loans and advances, they are considered separately. So what I mean to say is that if they want to align and they want to bring all these provisions, and another round of amendment would be required. Now there is one more point which says that suggest measures for removing bottlenecks in the overall functioning of statutory bodies like SFIO, IPFA, and NFRA. Now there is no amendment suggested in this particular Amendment Act. There is one more point which says that propose measures to further declog the NCLT that they have provided. One more point which we have not included in the slide, which has been part of the Amendment Act, is that they are proposing few more benches of NCLAT. So NCLAT, that is the Appellate Tribunal, we will be having one is already being in the process of being set up in Chennai. So that could be one. So that is the way in which the amendments have been introduced, and probably it would require in my personal experience, the SBO provisions require another set of overhauling, and it also maybe RPT also to some extent, because SEBI is also in the process of amending the RPT provisions. So to align it, it would require an amendment. So yes, I think so. More 3 years are required for more fine tuning of Companies Act is my personal view. Maybe one or two rounds of the amendment would be required. But anyways, if there are questions, if anyone from the audience, then we can definitely take the questions.
Hey, Gaurav, I just wanted to know that Companies Amendment Act 2020 is regarding to reduce the penalties overall as per the Companies Act by 2013. So that Act 2020 did not consider Section 99. It is punishment for default in complying with provision of Section 96 to 98.
Yeah.
So I think penalty is more. So why not reduce the penalty or is specified in Section 99?
Yeah, I'll just quickly refer to 99. It says that if there is a default in the provisions 96, 97, 98, then it is punishable up to 1 lakh rupees as fine. And in case of continuing default, it would be extended to 5,000 rupees per day in case of continuing default. Yeah, yes, that is correct. This is quite heavy, and this is mostly in the case of AGM and EGM of the company, where it is not convened in accordance with the relevant provisions. Probably they may consider this in the next round. But one point is that since there is only fine involved, this matter can be compounded. So probably compounding is the only option left. And I think so in the compounding also in the Amendment Act, they had introduced two slabs, 25 lakhs and less than 25 lakhs. So RD, compounding by RD and compounding by NCLT. In the Amendment Act 2019, they had introduced this. So the matter, if it is less than 25 lakhs, it may go to RD. Yes, it is correct. Yeah, but now it is not part of the Amendment Act. So let's see. They may include in the next amendment. We may suggest to the government when they come out for public comments. Great.
Company Amendment Act 2020 not considered for reduced penalty for AGM. That is Section 99. What is the rationale?
Yeah, rational. See, sometimes it is difficult to tell about rationale, very frankly. Means even if there is an amendment, it is difficult to justify the rationale. As I told you about the RPT non-compliance, right? It is difficult to justify that how this will be, processed by the ROC. So similarly, there is another aspect about the, you can say this not being included. So it is difficult to tell about rationale why it is not included. But I feel that whenever there is another round of amendment, we professionals can make a representation through industry bodies or institutes and get it ensure that the amendment is. I hope the session was helpful.